There are over 25,000 unique cards in Magic the Gathering, but how many are actually unplayable in the Commander format? This video, I want to talk about a creature that is truly one of a kind, Lim-Dûl's Paladin. Lim-Dûl's Paladin is a 0/3 human knight that costs 2 generic, 1 black, and 1 red mana. And if that incredible stat line doesn't impress you, then his 54 words of ability text definitely will. It reads, Trample. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard a card. If you don't, sacrifice Lim-Dûl's Paladin and draw a card. Whenever Lim-Dûl's Paladin becomes blocked, it gets +6/+3 until end of turn. Whenever Lim-Dûl's Paladin attacks and isn't blocked, it assigns no combat damage this turn, and defending player loses 4 life. Okay, let's dissect each of these abilities. First, we have the upkeep trigger. Lim-Dûl's Paladin was printed in the 1996 set Alliances, back when Wizards lived in abject terror that creatures were way too powerful. As such, many old creatures, like Lim-Dûl's Paladin, came with downsides. Lim-Dûl's Paladin's particular downside forces you to either discard a card or sacrifice this creature at upkeep. But hey, if you do choose to sacrifice him, you at least get 1 card back, a 4-mana cantrip. Next, we have 2 combat abilities. When Lim-Dûl's Paladin becomes blocked, he gets +6/+3, raising his total stats from a measly 0/3 to a powerful 6/6, and he does have trample. Finally, if Lim-Dûl's Paladin is not blocked, his final ability will trigger, causing the defending player to lose 4 life. In this case, Lim-Dûl's Paladin will deal no other combat damage, even if he's buffed by an anthem or equipment. The important distinction to make here is that the wording is assigns no combat damage. This is different from damage prevention. Damage prevention can be avoided with cards like Skullcrack that say specifically damage cannot be prevented. Unfortunately, these cards will have no effect on Lim-Dûl's Paladin. Okay, let's move on and talk about some cards that share similarities with Lim-Dûl's Paladin. I mean, truthfully, there are no cards quite like him, but I have identified some cards worth comparing. First, let's talk about the discard on upkeep or sacrifice this creature effect. This effect is famously a characteristic of the Masticore cycle of creatures. Believe it or not, the original Masticore was once one of the strongest creatures in Magic. In fact, and this is a tangent, but the card Deep Analysis actually depicts the original Masticore art with the flavor text, "The specimen seems to be broken." Because when it first came out, it really was broken. And honestly, I kind of get it. A 4-mana 4/4 that can ping down small creatures and regenerate itself isn't bad. Since the original Masticore was released, only 5 other Masticores have been printed, and most of them have a discard and upkeep clause similar to Lim-Dûl's Paladin. My personal favorite Masticore cards are Argentum Masticore, which is a colorless option that lets you blow up non-land permanents, and Razormane Masticore that bolts a creature for 3 damage on your draw step. Some other interesting creatures that make you discard on upkeep are Rotting Regisaur and Necrogoyf. At 3 mana, Rotting Regisaur offers incredible stats for the mana invested, but has no evasion and no other upsides. It's most often used in decks that care about sacrificing creatures with high power, like the Gitrog Ravenous Ride, for example. Necrogoyf comes with a symmetrical discard effect and has Madness, which means you are likely only paying 3 mana to get him out. His power will usually grow over time, likely eclipsing that of both Lim-Dûl's Paladin or Rotting Regisaur. That said, a 4-mana creature that is effectively a 6/6 in combat is no slouch. Wizards originally designed this discard on upkeep ability as a downside, but in modern Magic, it's extremely easy to turn discard into an upside. In any deck where you're already looking to fill your yard with juicy reanimation targets, these discard on upkeep effects are just enabling your game plan. There are plenty of great options for Reanimator commanders that could work here, like Slimefoot and Squee, Kroxa and Kunoros, Kenrith the Return King, or the recently released Alesha who laughs at fate. Even outside of Reanimator strategies, however, discarding cards is extremely useful. Plenty of decks are already built to abuse discard triggers, using cards like Brawlin Skyshark Rider, Inti Seneschal of the Sun, Bone Miser, or Archfiend of Ifnir to draw additional cards, kill your creatures, or just ping the table. Commanders like Anj Falkenroth, Bladewing Deathless Tyrant, or Sauron the Dark Lord may already be utilizing these cards and strategies. Discard is also great for turning on Delirium, which requires 4 different card types in your graveyard, or activating Descend, which requires a permanent card to be put in your graveyard from anywhere. One more thing to keep in mind about Lim-Dûl's Paladin's specific ability is that when you choose to not discard a card, or you can't, you're refunded 1 card. This might be a small improvement over cards like the Masticores, but it does make Lim-Dûl's Paladin an interesting reanimation target in and of itself. If your deck is built around repeatable recursion, Lim-Dûl's Paladin could be used in a pinch as a draw engine. Yes, it will only draw you one card a turn, but having that as an option is never a bad thing. Okay, let's talk about Lim-Dûl's Paladin's second ability. Whenever Lim-Dûl's Paladin becomes blocked, it gets +6/+3 until end of turn. There are tons of cards in Magic's history with interesting when blocked abilities. General Marhault Elsdragon, Vortex Elemental, Ansreg the Quakemole, Drellknock, Vicious Battle Rager, Sisters of Stone Death, Elven Warhounds, Saprazan Air, Sylvan Basilisk, Engulfing Slagworm, Tolarian Entrancer, Stormsurge Kraken, Neith of the Dire Hunt, Gloomsower, any Samurai with Bushido, any card with Afflict, and the list goes on. I would even count cards like Infiltration Lens, Kusarigama, Benefactor's Draught, and any of the Stuffy Doll type creatures in this category. Personally, I'm a big fan of these style of cards. Combat is one of the most fun parts of playing Magic, and these cards push you to turn your card sideways and present your opponents with a difficult choice, to block or not to block. Unless, of course, you make that choice for them. One of the best ways to abuse combat abilities like these is with a lure effect, named after the original card, Lure. These effects force your opponents to block, making it easy to trigger these when blocked abilities. While the best lure effects are in green, Roar of Challenge, Seaton's Desire, Noble Quarry, Tempting Licid, and You Look Upon the Tarrasque, just to name a few, all colors can replicate this effect to some degree except for black. Red has some interesting options in Invasion Plans and Grand Melee. Blue has Courtly Provocateur and Domineering Will. White has one of the strongest lure effects in the game with Audric Master Tactician, as well as some one-off spells like Blaze of Glory. White also has a few cards like Curtain of Light, Dazzling Beauty, and Trap Runner that can mimic the result of a lure effect in the right situation. Multicolor options include Timely Interference, Brutal War Chief's activated ability, Destined to Lead, Master Warcraft, and Boros Battleshaper. There are even a few cards in colorless that work in this theme: Magnetic Web, Grappling Hook, and Nemesis Mask. Nemesis Mask in particular is an auto-include in any deck looking to build around when blocked effects. I also want to mention the keyword Provoke, which was probably named after the green card Provoke. It reads, whenever this creature attacks, you may have target creature defending player controls untap and block it if able. While Provoke only appears on 9 creatures and only in the colors red, white, and green, the fact that it untaps a creature and forces it to block makes it especially relevant in this strategy. Now, given the number of cards that work in this space, you can probably build a deck in any combination of colors, though green is the easiest color to include. Potential commanders include Marika, Brutal Gladiator, Indoraptor, the Perfect Hybrid, Zurgo, Helm Smasher, Zagras, Thief of Heartbeats, and if you want to get really spicy, Torwaki. Now, I'm not sure what's more off about this card, that mustache or the nipples in his arm. At any rate, the last ability on Lim-Dûl's Paladin's gigantic text box is probably the hardest to build around, and that's because Wizards doesn't really do the assigned no combat damage gimmick anymore. That said, some of the more interesting cards in this space include Bone Dancer, Pharrell's Zealot, Dwarven Vigilantes, Kukemza Pirates, Stromgald Spy, Orcish Squatters, Goblin Vandal, Pharrell's Mantle, and the most famous version of this effect, Master of Cruelties. Since these effects require a creature to be unblocked, decks that are already focused on giving their creatures evasion work especially well here. Cards that make things completely unblockable are the best, but even things that give flying, fear, or menace could be enough to get through and trigger these effects. Cards like Break Through the Line, Goblin Tunneler, Thieves' Tools, Crafty Pathmage, and Subira Tulzidi Caravaner are especially good in these cases. Cover of Darkness could also work if you have a typal subtheme. While there aren't many creatures that have a trigger identical to Lim-Dûl's Paladin, there is a long list of creatures in Magic that desperately do not want to be blocked. Personally, I'm a big fan of creatures that cause your opponents to lose half their life on combat damage, but you might also be running cards like Archpriest of Shadows, Ragavan Nimble Pilferer, or even the Ancient Dragon cycle. As an example, commanders like Yidris, Maelstrom Wanderer, or Tana the Bloodsower, paired with black, may already be running cards that provide evasion. Kamiz Obscura Oculus might actually be the commander best suited to this strategy overall, though Kamiz is lacking red and sadly cannot include Lim-Dûl's Paladin. Okay, there is actually one more strategy that may be interested in adding Lim-Dûl's Paladin. Low power matters. Recently, Wizards has been printing a ton of cards that specifically care about creatures with power 2 or less. Lim-Dûl's Paladin is perfect in these decks, as he has 0 power except when he is blocked. Cards like Downly, Streetwise Lookout, even trigger his second ability twice, making him a 12/9 after blocks. Other cards like Assemble the Players, Welcoming Vampire, Enduring Innocence, Squad Rallier, Whisper Drink Vampire, Revelark, Sarah Redeemer, Dusk to Dawn, and more all favorably interact with creatures that have small power. And there is actually one particular commander who wants to be running all of these cards already, Alesha Who Smiles at Death. While I think I've covered several different commanders where Lim-Dûl's Paladin is a good fit, Alesha Who Smiles at Death is the perfect commander for our Paladin friend. Alesha works on multiple levels with his ability. He's a good reanimation target that is difficult to block. If he sticks around, you can use him to discard other reanimation targets, or sacrifice him for a card and bring him back again at combat. Most Alesha decks even run some evasion pieces to protect Alesha in combat, which could also work with cards like Virtus the Veiled or Feral Zealot, as I mentioned earlier. According to EDH Rec, only 39 of nearly 6,000 Alesha Who Smiles at Death decks are currently running Lim-Dûl's Paladin. That's less than 1% of eligible decks. Truly a travesty. Okay, now that we've talked a lot about Lim-Dûl's Paladin, I think it's time we got back to the original question. Is Lim-Dûl's Paladin actually unplayable? No way! In fact, I think it's a very playable card, coming in at 4 corned beef out of 9. While Lim-Dûl's Paladin isn't going to reach staple status anytime soon, there are quite a few deck archetypes that can take advantage of his abilities. I myself have a copy of him in my Olivia Crimson Bride deck, and it always brings a smile to my face when I get to play it. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and feel free to leave suggestions for cards you want me to review in the future. Oh, and one more thing, I'm still experimenting with different songs and backgrounds, so please let me know what you prefer between the first video and this one. Or if you have any other suggestions about my channel, literally any suggestions, please let me know in the comments below. And make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video to help my channel grow. Lim-Dûl's Paladins. Oh my word.